AFL-CIO President Richard Trumka is at it again. Now the union boss is pressuring Congress to rush the appointment of Elizabeth Warren to head the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, a watchdog byproduct of the Dodd-Frank financial overhaul. And he wants this done while the Senate is on recess. Wow. If unions have a stronger say than the United States Senate over who heads the new bureau that can regulate our economic activity, exactly whom will Mrs. Warren protect? Consumers or the unions? How's that for a setup, Skinner? Here now, our stocks business editor and my colleague Elizabeth McDonald, radio host and Freedom Watch regular in the studio today, Nancy Skinner, and Independent Institute senior fellow and Suffolk University economics professor Benjamin Powell. Ben, to you first. Are you surprised at all that the government is trying to get this micromanager of the economy into her job while the Senate is on recess, because they know it will never happen if the senators who want to vote against her can take to the floor?
Nothing these guys do ever surprises me. But I really don't think that's the big issue. It's not about the personality of who's going to run it. It's the fact that we have this agency in the first place. We shouldn't have one. The financial services sector is constantly making innovations, coming up with new products. We don't know in advance which ones are going to be successful and which ones are going to be failures. You need a market test for that, not some czar in Washington who can approve new financial products. Just a bad agency regardless of who runs it.
Ben, this is about the government telling people how to engage in what should be their free choices to engage in. Yes or no?
Yes. This is voluntary capitalistic acts between consenting adults. They should all be legal. The government does not know in advance which ones are going to be successful and which ones are going to be failures. They simply don't know. Therefore, they shouldn't put limits on what innovations that we can have.
Jobless claims are up again this week, with 427,000 people now seeking unemployment benefits. How much of that is due to the endless new regulations passed under Dodd-Frank? Yet, another regulation survived as the Senate failed to end the controversial swipe fee rule, which requires a cap on how much can be charged every time you swipe your debit card. When will the Senate wise up, Professor, and give the free market a chance to work and let banks and merchants and consumers decide what these swipe fees are going to be and not politicians? Ben.
I don't know when the Senate would wise up and do that, but hopefully the voters, citizens start demanding more of it. The problem with these put a price control on swipe fees, you're going to get less swiping. If you limit what the bank can collect, they're going to have less incentive to want to work this network and make it out there and easy for you to spend your money. Just like when you cap ATM fees, you see fewer ATMs around for people. Same problem's going to come up here.
Have we reached the point where we expect the government to decide what's fair and reasonable rather than things like supply and demand and the free choices of investors and consumers and bankers and merchants to decide what is fair and reasonable?
As for what's fair, I have no idea what fair is except what two people mutually agree upon. And as an outside observer, I've got to say that's fair. But then there's a question of what's the right price to make the market work? And Nancy, you say that it's gone from 10 cents to 45 cents. Well, Nancy, what is the right price? How do you figure it out? And how is a bureaucrat going to?
I'll give you the last word. We've got about 30 seconds. How can you decide, or the Democrats decide, or Rich Trumka decide, or Elizabeth Warren decide, or Barney Frank decide what's fair?
Somebody has to decide. And so let's take a look at...
What about the market?
They'll gouge us, okay? Because these are big, all the little banks are exempt from this. These are big banks gouging consumers.
I get it. I'm
I'm
not supporting the banks here, but I'm saying the retailers will pocket the difference, and the banks will hit us anyway with another fee on debit cards.
All right, guys, it's a pleasure. Ben Powell, Nancy Skinner here in the studio. EMAC, my friend and colleague, thanks very much for joining us. Back with the plain truth on the Constitution, compromise, and debt after this.